This is going to be a real special treat for y'all. We are here with not a native, but
an American Indian, misclassified.
Who told you that?
Oh man, say that one more time. Try to talk up so they can pick you up too.
Sure. Yes, I come from American Indians that were misclassified.
Now, you know what I noticed? What's going on? It's your brother YK. Now, you know what I noticed? They have no problem being called American Indian. They have no problem with the word America. It's just something about Africa.
Prior to 10 years ago, most Negroes identified Africa with a savage, jungle-like place. And whenever you mentioned the word African, in their mind's eye, they could see the image of someone running around with a spear, with no language, who'd say Ugga Bugga Boo or Bwana or something, and who'd be in a jungle running from lions or chasing lions.
Oh, how you gonna be called? How you gonna be named after a landmass? But you have no problem being called an American Indian?
But you don't like to be called an Aborigine. You want to be called an American.
Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to?
Who called you that? Who told you?
Beautiful. So, sister, I have a few questions here that I would like to ask you.
Yes.
Hopefully, you could bring some clarity of this whole situation here, why you believe that you are who you are.
Okay.
And the first question I have for you is, what is the importance of genealogy?
Well, genealogy is important because I know there's a lot of people that want to push DNA testing. I understand the science that people are, believing in, and it has to be believed in. But for genealogy, what you want to do is you want to trace your...
Hold on, let me stop right there. You don't have to believe in DNA. DNA is not something you believe in. DNA is a scientific fact. All right? Let's keep going.
So, and you want to...
And if you don't believe that it's a scientific fact, you wouldn't bring up someone like Albert Perry.
But you gotta explain, why is the oldest man as we speak is in America? Okay, you look at it right now.
What oldest man? What are you referring to?
His name is Albert Perry, and he was coined the oldest.
You talking about the oldest living person?
No, he's gone. He's this.
I don't understand what you're asking. Let me look for Albert Perry. I don't know what you're referring to.
Go ahead.
And what is he? What else? Albert Perry is not.
The oldest Y chromosome on the planet, and his descendants carry it. His descendants, they found it through the DNA test. He took a DNA test to try to find. His sons took a DNA test to try to find a genetic lineage.
But that doesn't say that the Y chromosome originates here. That's not what that means.
It says it pushed back the timeline of humanity. That's what it says.
So you believe in DNA when it benefits you, like most so-called indigenous Americans. They accept DNA when it benefits them, even though she took the whole Albert Perry thing wrong. Let's keep going.
Call your ancestors' names. I have been lucky enough, and I know many other Black Americans have been lucky enough to be able to trace their family through history. I've known people who have found land patents, they have found deeds, they have found war records, all types of things. I know for my great-grandmother.
Here's the thing with genealogy. If you're an African American or so-called American Indian, you're going to hit a brick wall. You call it reclassification. I call it not being classified at all.
20 million black people who don't even know the history of their ancestors. Why? Because he took it away from them.
Because one of those main reasons is because our ancestors were treated like chattel. There were no records of a lot of our ancestors. And then not only that, when they went from one plantation to another plantation, they had their names changed. So it's a lot of things that happened where it's hard for you to go past the 1800s due to that brick wall that many of us African Americans suffer from. Like, now, DNA testing destroys the reclassification claim. All right? See, Sarnetta asked you a good question. He said, what do y'all accept more? DNA or genealogy? And you said you accepted genealogy more than DNA. And I would say that both are equally important. DNA and genealogy. Because with your DNA, you can go back and find out where you come from, what tribe you came from in Africa.
As African Americans, we've been severed from our past. We've been severed from the continent in a way where we're reaching for a connection to it. Until you make that connection, that there's a disconnect there. What I did is I took a DNA test.
Me too.
Yeah. So where you from?
I'm 97% East African, West African.
No, see, that's the wrong test.
Which one you took? Like you got the
you took Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
I took African Ancestry.
What's the difference?
So African Ancestry can tell you the specific ethnic group that you come from. So not only, if you just know, the country, that's still the European borders to a certain degree.
Gotcha.
But if you know that you're Yoruba from Nigeria, then you can now you can pinpoint specific customs and rituals.
Got you.
that are part of your past.
There's something called African ancestry. When they compare your genetics with other Africans on that continent, and you guys share the same common ancestor, it's not from America. It's from Africa. Dr. Rick Kittles got the largest African database. So you can just get rid of, okay, well, it was some Indians who were reclassified as black. Okay, take a DNA test. And it can show you what percentage of not African ancestry. Take a 23andMe or a different type of one that deals with percentages, and they would tell you which people you come from the most. Is it an African? Is it an Indian? Is it a European? That's when we start dealing with percentages. See, you got a lot of so-called American Indians that they think African ancestry is the same as 23andMe.
Yeah. So where you from?
I'm 97% East African, West African.
No, see, that's the wrong test.
And that is not the case. So let's keep going.
Who is an American Indian misclassified, and rest her soul because she just passed away at 98.
So whenever you're dealing with classifications, get that out of here, yo. Get that out of here. DNA, if you feel that, okay, they misclassified us, take a DNA test. And clearly, sister, you believe in DNA because you brought up Albert Perry. But see, like Sarnetta said, y'all are afraid to take the DNA test because then you can no longer claim to be someone you are not. That person you would like to be. So you would rather say, you know what? Nah, I don't believe in that stuff. That stuff is not real. It's entertainment. It's entertainment purposes only. Nobody can't know where you come from through spit without even understanding how it's done. Do you follow me? So you can't accept DNA. It's like a Christian accepting DNA. Then you got to let go of Adam and Eve. And then you have to let go of the fact that if there was no Adam and Eve, there's no sin. And if there's no sin, why do we need Jesus again? This is why you guys have to deny science. Let's keep going, man.
She was a veteran's wife. So finding out those benefits that you may come from veterans in this time period, you're not going to find that through DNA. You can find...
And you're not supposed to find that through DNA. You're not supposed to find records. That's what genealogy is for. That's why one is called genealogy and the other is called DNA. If DNA was supposed to do what genealogy was supposed to do, then DNA would be called genealogy. Genealogy shows you the time and place of where you were. DNA shows you the origins of where you're from. Do you get it? It's more than just records. DNA shows what, how much melanin you got. This is genetics. We talking about biology. Why is your hair nappy? Why do you have pigmentation? This is DNA. DNA is deeper than your mother and your father. It's their mothers, their fathers, our common ancestors. So they are equally important. That should have been the answer. You can't have one without the other. Let's keep going.
Find that through records. You can know where their graves are. You can pay respects to them. You're not dealing with mysteries, the gray area. So with
DNA is not a mystery. It's not a gray area. You're actually going to get what you looked for. So if I wanted to know which tribe I came from in Africa, I go to DNA. If I wanted to see, what was the name of this person that was in my family, what are the things then you would go to genealogy. You get what I'm saying? But when genealogy fails, you have DNA. Because it can actually pinpoint the people you come from. Let's keep going.
Genealogy, you do want to make sure that you are connecting. I know that a lot of people who build altars.
Prime example. Let me explain to you why DNA is just as equally as important. Because if you can trace the tribe you come from, you can know their cultures. And because our ancestors had their culture stolen from us, their language stolen from them, right? How would you know what they spoke without knowing what group of people they originated from? How would you know their customs without knowing what group of people they originate from? So yes, genealogy is good, but what happens when we have brick walls and we have slavery, chattel slavery? Let's keep going.
Shrines and all these different things, that's really beautiful, but you got to know who you're calling on. You know, and some people have been fortunate to find pictures of their ancestors, find the stories of them, letters. If there were slaves, you can find the slave records, the slave census. I think it's a beautiful spiritual journey. It's very emotional, and I wouldn't tell anyone to disturb from it by taking another easy way out.
And another thing that I wanted to address, right? If you say things like, well, I don't trust the government. You know, you send your spit off, and then they send you back a percentage. Where are you going to get the records of your ancestors when you do genealogy? You're going to the federal government. They recorded those census. So if you can trust the census, you can trust DNA. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So let me ask you, what do you assume? What do you think that is better, DNA testing or genealogy?
Well, like
because I've been listening to a lot of the scholars, a lot of the teachers, and we tend to move towards DNA testing. Is one of the ways that you could really find out who you are, who are your ancestors, where you come from.
Right.
Exactly. Where you come from. That means you can actually go to the beginning. You know how we come from thousands and thousands of different ancestors? We can pinpoint, because you know we all got that Y. It's always passed down. So we can actually pinpoint who we were, who we originated from. And you don't think that's as equally as important as knowing about a handful of grandparents, a handful of grandparents, to say, you know what, where do I come from? Oh, you come from the Igbo people on your maternal side. You come from the Igbo people or this tribe. Isn't that like a whole lot easier than getting caught up with the brick road? See, when you do that, you can no longer say, well, I'm an American Indian. You can't do that. Because you're going to have to acknowledge that other side, that other African side of you. Because if you're going to have that African gene because they intermingled. So you're going to find out on which side was where I come from as it was our Igbo. And if it comes back that on your maternal and paternal side, you're an African, you already know what it is. You have no native in you like that. So, you might have one. This is why they say that we have a small, generally African Americans have a small percent of native in them. Like, why we acting like we don't have science? You have un poquito, a little bit. I guess all you really need is a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. Nah. The majority rule. Let's get it.
So I'm going to ask you again, what do you think is more important for us? Genealogy or DNA testing?
Well, I think that for the Black American, we're in a very sensitive part of history where we have a lot of people telling us who we are, what we are, and where we're from.
Exactly. Just like somebody told the Indians, the natives, that they were American Indians. Who told you that? Who told you that? Who told you that? It was the white man, but you're perfectly okay with being called that.
To drown out the lies, I'm going to say genealogy, right? Because I can tell you my 4th great grandmother. My DNA test is not going to say my great.
Exactly. And what happens when you can't find out where you come from past your 4th great grandmother? Then what do you do? How do you know you ain't come from a white man or a white woman? What do you do? Who comes in with the cape? DNA. What do you do when you have been reclassified? You come in with the DNA. DNA destroys your reclassification claim. Destroys it. This is why you have to deny DNA testing. You have to. It cannot exist within your little theory. It cannot. It's like water and oil. It don't mix. It don't mix. DNA.
Great grandmother's name. It can maybe find a cousin if that's, like I said, if that's the science you believe in. For me, once again, and for a lot of people who have found success in this, you have to.
I found so much success in this. I was able to trace my genealogy back to the 1700s. Okay? And I even hit a brick wall. I wonder why. It had nothing to do with reclassification and everything to do with the fact that they were not documented. It's simple. Our ancestors were considered chattel. That's it. Census helped us, gave us the little bit of what we do have today, and other records, and other events that required you to sign up and leave your Hancock. Do you follow me? But without that, who do you run to? DNA. Let's go.
You know how to tell your story. I can't tell Jabari's story. I can't tell Saneta's story. And Saneta, I have heard that you do have Caribbean ancestry as well, similar to myself. But we have to be able to be honest about what our journey is. If Jabari's honest about his journey, I'm honest about my journey, we can tell the American history story.
But see, you wasn't honest about your journey. Because when Saneta had asked you, when Jabari had asked you, where do you come from where do your father descend from? Or your grandparents? You act like you didn't want to answer that. You didn't want to say where they came from. So no, you're not honest about your journey, Sandra. You're very dishonest. And this is why you choose genealogy over DNA when they're equally important. Because you're so dishonest that you're not even honest enough to say that we need both of them. We need both. To have that connection and understanding of where our ancestors were located at on this continent, Genealogy is good. But when we want to pinpoint where we originate from, DNA trumps all. Let's keep going, man.
Period. We've gone through colonization, and we're
Period.
still going through colonization. Let's not act like this thing is over with. Okay, we're still going through something. So, like I said, for me, once again, genealogy is always going to be the key, whether you call it Negro.
No. And I just proved it to you. Genealogy is not going to be the key. Put it like this. Let me show you how ridiculous this sounds, right? Let's use a little bit of logic here. She's saying that genealogy is the key, right? And then on the other hand, she's telling us that we have been reclassified. So if we have been reclassified, think. I know it's some Indians in here that's thinking with me, right? If we have been reclassified, how are we going to use that to pinpoint where we are if the people that recorded it misclassified us? So genealogy, you're going to be you're confused because you don't even know who you were. So you're telling me, Sandra, to go with the people that's misclassified. And misclassified, you don't even know if it was told in reverse. You don't know. This is an assumption. But how do you know? How do you distinguish if you are one of the ones that was misclassified or classified without a DNA test? How do you know? So you just believe, or you just accept what your grandmothers said even though they were reclassified. What? And like Jabari said, you have more than one relative, ancestor. So how do you know if they weren't African without a DNA test? You don't know. You don't know. And if you want to find out, take a DNA test. You used Albert Perry. So you, deep down, you accept DNA. Dan Calloway accepts DNA. I already showed you he accepted DNA. So it's your brother YK the truth. And let me repeat that. DNA testing destroys your classification argument. And they call it murder.